So we're back to our rocky shoreline. Here's the photo once again. We have the far shore, we have the grasses up front, we have a pale tint in the water, and we have the sky in and some out of focus grasses. So far they're just out of focus. And I was trying out some Hooker's Green, and you know, it's okay. So let's use the same colors, which would be mixing your deep yellow, a little bit of burnt sienna, excuse me, and some ultramarine blue, very little ultramarine blue. And that will give you something close to yellow ochre or raw sienna if you don't have it. This is all dry. Everything on this picture plane, it feels nice and dry right now. So I am going to start stroking in the color of these rocks. And I'm starting pretty pale. Over here, I see that it is lighter, and over on this plane of the rock, there's a little more pigment. Not much. In general, it's not super sunny bright, but there is light on these rocks. And as I did in the other demo, I'm going to add a little red here and a little blue. And we're going to start connecting our shapes. So these two are up against each other. And I did paint these grasses in before I started painting the rocks. And now I'm going to paint around those grasses to maintain them. Another way to have done that would have been to first use masking fluid, let it dry, and then paint everything over it. Take it off after the rocks and the water are down, and you'll have saved the grassy shapes. This way, you have to pay attention, and you need to, you'll be focusing a little more on painting around the grasses, which is completely doable. It just takes focus and patience and a little bit of practice. So I do have a bit of a puddle here, not anymore. So I browned up this rock a bit, and this rock back here, I'm not going to use as much pigment because it's back here. It's a little further back, keeping it light. And I'm going to add just a bit of red up here to this foreground rock here. And also, all the rocks that are up front can get a little bit of a red tone. But this one back here, I'm keeping it just a little bit more tan because it's not up front. So I want it to be able to take the viewer back in space a little bit. Even though, and then these rocks on the edge are a little grayer, I am adding a little bit of that dark brown that I mixed with ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. And this is creating yet another type of tan. So I am pretty much making each rock slightly different, if not very different, in value, tone. There's one rock coming off the edge that I didn't even draw in, and it is dark. And I just mixed plenty of brown, burnt sienna, and with plenty of ultramarine blue, and it's coming in off this edge because it is in the shadow back there. And to start bringing shadows at the bottom of these rocks, burnt sienna and a little blue here. And I'll start back over here where things are starting to dry. And I'll put a little tip of my brush here, and that's the next value. And a little bit of brown here that I've mixed, burnt sienna and blue again. This can come down a little further. And that goes back into a kind of a rock cave. And this will come all the way around here. And actually, the whole side of this rock is kind of in shadow. Well, it's not kind of in shadow, it is in shadow. This one also has quite a large shadow on it. So yeah, these are on the ground. They must have a shadow to hold them down. And if you're using earth tones, then it's great to just keep mixing with the same colors you were using for the main part of the rock and add blue. That's basically all I've done. So here are the grasses. If I stroke in between them a little bit, they start to have a little bit more of a grassy feeling. And I don't want to get too hung up on that. I think this should come up a little further here. And that should come up to meet it. Go back to my original color. There. Lighten that back up. Keep it a little lighter right there. And here I am back at the grasses. So before anything dries, I'm laying in these strokes that will look like the rock is behind the grasses. This is challenging. It's great practice. It's good for you to try a lot of new things when you're learning. And I'm softening the bottom of these just because I don't want them to be too sharp. And there is rock behind these. There's a little rock right there. And I might as well also do these lightly. There's some of these other rocks here. Little ones. There's a couple of little rocks that come off here. And I'm going to keep them light. One here, one here, one there, one there. And this one, I think I wanted it to be a little more upward moving. So let's see about getting the shadow on this far rock. That is a very dark shadow. So I'll darken that right now. And there's a little line right here. And there's a line. So we're looking for lines, triangles, rectangles, all sorts of geometric shapes. That is what you're finding in rocks. And the more you study and watch them, the more you'll see the different shapes, the planes, where the shadows are. And that is definitely darker. And if I don't want to glaze, I'm going to darken it up right now so that it gets a nice shadow. So now this rock has one side in the light, this side in the dark, another side in the dark. And let's just play with a little blue water here. And I see a little wiggly line coming out from that, which represents ripple in the water. And I want to also take a look at these little ripples that are in between here. Whoops. My brush is barely touching down. It's just doing a little wiggly dance to connect those shapes, that's all. And this is a great tip on this number 6.